On the 10th time at the Civil Affairs Bureau with my girlfriend to obtain our marriage certificate, just one step away from the final embossing of the steel seal, she was called away by an abrupt phone call from Bai Yuiguan. I pleaded desperately, only to be met with a resounding slap across my face. That day, I became the biggest joke at the Civil Affairs Bureau. I had no more expectations left for my girlfriend, and without hesitation made a call to her mother. Aunt Yun, I've come to my senses. If you haven't changed your mind, let's meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Today marked the 10th time Lu Cixi and I stood on the red carpet of the Civil Affairs Bureau. After 4 years of dating and countless marriage proposals, today was finally meant to mark the conclusion. My hands clutching Lu Cixi's were trembling slightly from the intensity of the moment. Just as the steel seal was about to imprint our marriage certificate, the familiar ringtone exploded like thunderclap. After answering the phone and hearing a few words, Lu Cixi's face instantly paled. She immediately abandoned the marriage certification process and turned to leave. The engagement ring left a bloody scratch on her ring finger as she shook off my hand, yet I instinctively grabbed the hem of her clothes and pleaded humbly, Cixi, whatever's happened, let's complete the marriage registration first, okay? Just one last step. It'll only take a minute. Lu Cixi's almond eyes blazed with anger as she slapped me hard across the face. Zhang Long, how can you be so selfish? Ah Hui's stomach pain is excruciating, and at a time like this, you only care about yourself. Move aside now. Don't contact me these next 2 days. I'll be staying at Ah Hui's house, so I can take care of him properly. After speaking, she turned and hurriedly dashed out of the Civil Affairs Bureau without looking back, leaving me standing alone in heartbroken silence. Staff members looked at me with sympathetic gazes fixed on me. People behind crowded around, whispering and pointing fingers, openly watching my mockery. I turned a deaf ear and revealed a self-deprecating bitter smile. Cixi, this is already the 10th time, and our last chance. We could have obtained our marriage certificate back in June last year. Who would have thought that a childhood sweetheart, Su Hui, would suddenly emerge? As a result, Lu Cixi and I ended up going back and forth to the Civil Affairs Bureau 10 times. The first time, Su Hui merely said over the phone that he wanted to see her, and Lu Cixi snatched the household register from the staff's hands and sprinted out the door. The second time, Su Hui got drunk from drinking. She went back to take care of him and stayed with him the entire night. The third time was even more absurd. Su Hui claimed his cat had depression, and Lu Cixi left me behind and took off without hesitation. Every single time we to get our marriage certificate, Su Hui would call her away with various reasons that sounded utterly absurd and unreasonable, and she, every time without fail, would leave without a second thought. And this time, it's already the 10th time. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and without hesitation removed the engagement ring I had cherished as a treasure, tossing it into the trash can. A 4-year relationship. I must put a period to this chapter. But not with marriage, with an end. For the first 10 times, she was able to abandon marrying me for her childhood sweetheart. Then for countless times thereafter, she would definitely do so again for his sake. Even cheat, abandoning me once more. In that case, I'll end this relationship. Whatever she does from now on has nothing to do with me. I was heartbroken and decided to leave this city. But before leaving, I must meet Lu Cixi's mother, Lu Yun. She was gentle, intelligent, kind. Not only did she never look down on me for being a poor boy and an orphan, but she also offered me gentle encouragement and unwavering support. In life, she treated me virtually better than her own daughter. To make myself useful, I often went to her house to help out, do household chores, even took the initiative to keep her company in conversations, give her massages and so on. If I leave without saying goodbye, she would surely be heartbroken. Arriving at Aunt Yun's house, she saw me, and a heartfelt joy lit up her face. Her gentle gaze lingered on me persistently, unwilling to avert for a long while. I wanted to return a smile, but couldn't muster even a hint of one. Aunt Yun, noticing my expression was off, immediately sensed something was wrong. Under her persistent questioning, I sighed and told her everything. After hearing this, Aunt Yun was enraged. How utterly outrageous. How could I have given birth to such a wayward daughter? We're practically about to get our marriage license, yet she would go accompany some childhood sweetheart. Has all her previous education been in vain? In my memory, Aunt Yun had always been a gentle and graceful woman, yet here she was cursing vehemently on my behalf. Along, don't worry. I'll stand up for you. I'll call her right now and make her come back to get the marriage certificate with you immediately. If she dares refuse, I'll break her legs. I hurriedly stopped her. No need, Aunt. She doesn't love me. Even if we get the marriage certificate, there won't be happiness. Better for us to each live our lives well. Besides, I've already given up on her. There's not half a trace of lingering attachment left. Each of those 10 marriage certificate applications stabbed a knife deep into my heart. On the 10th blade, my love for her finally shattered completely, forever beyond repair. Aunt Yun fell silent. Her eyes filled with pain and heartache as she looked at me. Tears she cowl. Didn't hold back began to fall. I sighed, stood up. The main purpose of this visit was to bid farewell. With the matter settled, I was prepared to leave. But just as I turned around, Aunt Yun actually hugged me. I froze completely, at a loss for what to do. Along, don't go. This voice brimmed with entreaty and panic, piercing straight through my soul. Aunt Yun. Aunt Yun's face was written all over with panic and fear as she held me tightly, refusing to let go. Along, there's something I've held on to for 3 years. I'm afraid if I don't say it now, I might never get another chance. Along, I know you're a good man. Since my daughter doesn't want to marry you, I'll marry you. Would you marry me? Aunt Yun, thinking I was about to leave the city forever, paled in horror. In desperation, she could no longer contain her long-suppressed emotions, which finally erupted in this moment. Aunt Yun, what did you say? My face froze in utter shock. I thought I was hallucinating, my voice trembling uncontrollably. Aunt Yun released her grip, her eyes filled with shyness. She mustered the courage to look directly at me, and spoke as if she had exhausted all her strength. Along, over the years we've spent together, I've come to realize that I've fallen in love with you. But you were my daughter's boyfriend, so I had to keep this love restrained. Now I don't want to miss out anymore. I don't want to lose you. Along, if you don't mind that I'm older than you, we can go get our marriage license right now. If Cece doesn't want you, I do. Aunt Yun was stunningly beautiful, and the first time I saw her, I was completely blown away. Although she was already 40 years old, the passage of time had left no trace on her. Her skin was as smooth as an infant's, with a figure both curvaceous and proportionate, tall and voluptuous. Her entire being radiated a mature charm, and coupled with her inherently gentle and intellectual disposition, she was endowed with an unparalleled allure. Under Aunt Yun's heartfelt confession, my heart began to race unreliably. To think Aunt Yun had long been deeply in love with me. No wonder she showered me with such boundless affection. It turns out, she had been expressing her love for me through alternative means all along. My heart stirred. But after all, she is my senior and also Lu Cece's mother. Under the strong pressure of moral values, I can't accept this right now. I could only make an excuse to say I needed to think it over and fled the scene. Along the way, I was overwhelmed with mixed emotions, and before I knew it, I found myself back home. When I opened the door to my house, I was directly stunned. A delicate-looking man was contentedly resting his head on Lu Cece's lap, while Lu Cece gazed at him with deep affection in her eyes. This man was none other than Su Hui, Lu Cece's childhood sweetheart. I smiled self-deprecatingly. Every time I wanted to rest my head on her lap before, Lu Cece would refuse with various excuses. So her legs had always belonged to Su Hui alone, never to accommodate another man. Upon seeing me, Lu Cece immediately hardened her expression and reprimanded. What are you doing back here? Ahui doesn't like anyone disturbing him. Hurry up and get out of here. Since I've already chosen to end this relationship, I have no intention of indulging her anymore, I said flatly. This is my home. If he wants to rest, he can very well go back to his own house. My place ain't welcoming outsiders. At this moment, Su Hui clutched his stomach with difficulty and struggled to rise. Cece, it's all my fault. If I hadn't forgotten to clean my room, you wouldn't have brought me to his place, and then your boyfriend wouldn't have gotten angry. I think I'd better go back now. Su Hui feigned a pained expression as he tried to get up, causing Lu Cece to panic as she rushed to comfort him. Then he stood up abruptly and slapped me hard across the face, shouting angrily, Zhang Long, are you even human? Ahui is unwell. What's wrong with letting him stay here for a while? How can you be so selfish? Can't you just give way to him? For her childhood sweetheart, she showed no regard for my feelings at all. All the kindness I showered upon her in the past has now become a litany of wrongs. I was utterly disappointed in her. Su Hui was also furtively casting a provocative gaze at me. I turned a blind eye and said no more, ready to enter the room to grab some things and leave this filthy place. Yet when I opened the bedroom door, the sight inside sent me into a rage. Before leaving, I had cleaned the room spotless, but now it's turned completely into a beggar's den. Quilt thrown everywhere, wardrobe half collapsed, and garbage all over the floor. What made me snap was seeing the photo I kept on my nightstand, my most treasured possession, lying abandoned on the floor. As an orphan, this was the only tangible connection I had to my parents. Now its frame lay shattered into fragments, compounding the betrayal. The photo inside had actually been pulled out and torn into countless pieces. Gnashing my teeth, I stormed out of the room, yanked Su Hui off the couch where he was lying, and demanded, "Was it you who tore up that photo?" Su Hui pretended to look innocent, saying pitifully, "What photo? Brother Long, what are you talking about?" But he immediately lowered his voice and provoked, "I tore it. If you've got the guts, hit me. If you strike me, you and Cece will never have another chance." Without a second thought, I began raining punch after punch down on his face. Punch after punch left his face bruised and swollen, blood streaming from his nose as he howled in pain. Ah, stop, don't. Lu Cixi turned pale with shock, lunged at me and roared. Zhonglong, have you gone mad? What has Ahui ever done to you, that you treat him like this? You've gone too far. I glared at him through gritted teeth. Too much? Which of his disgusting deeds isn't too much? But I never acknowledged it. But 1,000 times over, he shouldn't have ripped up my photo. The photo is my reverse scale. Lu Cixi was outraged and retorted. What proof do you have that he tore the photo? Besides, it's just a stupid photo. What's the big deal? That is the only photo of my parents. So what? Anyway, you're just an abandoned orphan. What's the use of keeping that blurry photo? I think tearing it up was a good thing. A heartless bastard like you deserves to be abandoned. Faced with this ugly face, I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Though I desperately wanted to throw a punch, I ultimately held back for Aunt Yun's sake. Taking a deep breath, I stared at her coldly. Lu Cixi, it seems you're determined to protect this bastard. I hope you won't regret it. Completely consumed with concern for Su Hui, Lu Cixi didn't register a single word I said. Snorting coldly, I turned and left. In the stairwell, I pulled out my phone. Aunt Yun, I've thought it through. If you haven't changed your mind, let's meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Lu Cixi, when you find out I've become your father, the look on your face will be priceless. After leaving the Civil Affairs Bureau, looking at the marriage certificate in my hand, I suddenly felt a pang of regret. After all, I only agreed to marry Aunt Yun on impulse to get back at Lu Cixi. This realization made me feel somewhat guilty towards her. But when I saw Aunt Yun holding the marriage certificate with a blissful, sweet smile, I froze for a moment, then unconsciously smiled. Marrying Aunt Yun, perhaps. I had made an absolutely correct choice. Wife, wife, I called out several times before Aunt Yun finally reacted. She pointed at herself and asked dazedly, Are you calling me? Seeing her contrastingly cute demeanor, I couldn't help but feel amused. Never expected Aunt Yun to have such a side to her. It was utterly adorable. I proactively grabbed her hand, gazing at her tenderly. We've legally registered our marriage. Now you're my legal wife. If I'm not calling you, who else would I be addressing? Aunt Yun immediately flushed crimson, yet undeniable joy and sweetness sparkled in her eyes, thoroughly relishing this form of address. She raised her head to look at me, her gaze as tender as spring water, softly uttering a single word. Husband. Faced with a peerless beauty calling me husband, my heart instantly raced. I believe no man could resist such a declaration. Staring at those crimson lips, I could no longer hold back and directly captured them with mine. She stiffened abruptly, seemingly unprepared for my sudden advance. But having imagined this scene countless times in her dreams, she proactively wrapped her arms around my waist, beginning to reciprocate and savor this sweet moment. Wife, I swear I'll protect your life from now on. Devote myself wholeheartedly you, for eternity. Lu Yun nodded with happy tears streaming down her face. After returning home, I eagerly started discussing wedding arrangements. After all, this is the most important moment in a woman's life. But Lu Yun stopped me. Husband, wedding ceremonies cost a fortune. You're still building your startup and need funds urgently. Let's avoid unnecessary expenses whenever possible. All we need is the whole family being complete and having a meal together. I was deeply moved. Lu Yun truly was a virtuous partner. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that my choice was absolutely correct. Darling, when should we tell our daughter about this? Aunt Yun and I had already obtained our marriage certificate. Now we were legally married spouses. By logical extension, I had legally cubed, my status to become Lu Cixi's official father. I really couldn't imagine what expression Lu Cixi would make when she found out. The more I anticipated it, the more eagerly I looked forward to that moment. A cloud of worry surfaced on Lu Yun's face, the sweet happiness from moments ago having dissipated without a trace in an instant. After all, I was her daughter's fiancé before, and now we have actually gotten married, creating a scenario that feels like competing with her daughter for a man. Lu Yun simply didn't know how to face her anymore. Maybe, let's inform her after some time, Give ourselves more time to prepare. Today, she had mustered all her courage to confess her feelings and propose to me. Suddenly having to inform our daughter about our relationship now was truly putting her on the spot. I shook my head. The more we delay this matter, the longer this awkwardness would linger. As the saying goes, a gentleman's revenge shouldn't wait overnight. I wanted her to call me dad sooner rather than later. Wife, no preparations are needed. There's no better day than today. She'll find out eventually anyway. What difference does one day sooner or later make? The sooner we tell her, the sooner she can mentally prepare herself and come to terms with it. Isn't there a saying that delays lead to complications? She's already an adult. I'm sure she'll wish us happiness. Under my continuous coaxing and persuasion, Lu Yun gradually let go of her worries, agreed to the plan, and scheduled the reveal for tonight. As soon as we finalized the timing, I immediately called Lu Cece. Before I could speak, angry shouts erupted from the phone. Zhang Long, how dare you have the face to call me? Do you know what condition Ah Hui is in after your beating? Not even a single word of apology, just sneaking away like a thief. You're utterly shameless. I order you to get your ass over here right now. Kneel and apologize before Ah Hui. I remained silent, turning my gaze to my wife Lu Yun. At this moment, her face showed no expression, turned ghostly pale. Lu Yun genuinely considers me her husband, which naturally makes Lu Cece my daughter. This daughter berates her father and even demands his kneeling, utterly unfilial and heinous. Lu Yun couldn't tolerate it any longer, snatching the phone to assert her maternal authority. Lu Cece, you've gone too far. How dare you speak like that? Apologize to your father right now. I looked at Lu Yun in surprise. I thought we'd wait until evening, never expecting the truth would be exposed so abruptly. Mom. Fine, Zhang Long. You actually tattled to my mom. You're not a man at all. Let me tell you, even if you tattle to my mom, it's useless. You must come and kowtow to Ah Hui to apologize right now. There's no room for negotiation on this. Mom, you don't know. Zhang Long is utterly inhuman. He hit someone for no reason, then fled after the beating. Is this something a decent person would do? Mom, don't be fooled by his beast-in-human clothing disguise. Lu Cece didn't catch the last part of that sentence, filtering it out automatically, and kept relentlessly bad-mouthing me over the phone. Yun Lu's face grew darker and darker, trembling with anger as she shouted furiously. Enough. Cece Lu, shut your mouth. Apologize to your father right now, or you're no longer my daughter. Lu Cece was stunned, asking cautiously, Dad? What dad? Mom, didn't my father die over 20 years ago? How could I have offended him? I leaned closer to the phone with a smile. Good daughter, I am your father now. Aunt Yun and I have registered our marriage. Lu Cece flew into a rage. Zhang Long, how dare you joke about my mother? How audacious can you be? Lu Yun said, Cece, your father isn't lying. We've officially registered our marriage, and now Along is your father. You may not have known, I don't blame you, but you know perfectly well how well Along has treated you. Yet you spew such filth and abusive language, even demanding he kneel to others. Lu Cece, you've gone too far. How did I teach you before? Have you fed your sense of morality, justice, propriety, wisdom, and integrity to dogs? There was a full minute of silence on the call. I'm coming back right now. Her voice trembled with panic as she spoke, then hung up immediately. In the room, Lu Cece stared at the disconnected phone with a face full of panic. No way, absolutely impossible. How could Mom possibly register marriage with Zhang Long? I don't believe it. This must be fake. Early in the morning they were supposed to get their marriage certificate, yet by nightfall, her fiancé had somehow ended up becoming her father. No woman could accept this. Lu Cece finished packing in a flurry and rushed to head out. Su Hui, who had been sitting on the sofa without overhearing the conversation, watched her frantic movements. His eyes darted around as he asked nervously, Cece, where are you going? Are you just abandoning me like this? With urgent desperation in her voice, Lu Cece replied, I need to find Zhang Long. Su Hui's face momentarily flashed with a hint of anger, but it vanished instantly as he feigned weakness and sorrow, speaking pitifully. Oh well, after all, he's your fiancé. I'm just an insignificant nobody. Cece, go ahead. Even though my stomach hurts terribly and my face is battered from his beating, I'll be fine alone. Let me walk you out. As he finished speaking, he struggled to rise before theatrically collapsing to the floor, groaning in exaggerated agony. This was his usual trick. In the past, at moments like these, no matter how pressing the matters were, Lu Cece would never have paid them any mind and would only stay behind to accompany him. But Su Hui waited for a long time, yet there was no response at all. When he looked up, the room was empty. Lu Cece had long since left the room. Su Hui slowly rose to his feet, his face twisting into a ferocious expression, span class equals bold, eyes brimming with venomous resentment/span. Zhang Long. On the road, Lu Cece's heart was restless and troubled. An hour later, she finally arrived at her mother's doorstep. He took a deep breath and opened the door to his home. The scene that unfolded inside instantly struck her like a thunderbolt, her face turning deathly pale. Because at this moment, I was playing a shameful game with Lu Yun on the sofa. After all, I'm a vigorous young man full of vitality. Faced with a peerless stunner like Lu Yun, I simply couldn't hold myself back. Moreover, Lu Yun was also at an age akin to wolves and tigers, in the prime of her life where her carnal desires proved even more intense than mine. She would constantly tease and provoke me, whether intentional or not, until on that very sofa, we nearly set the sparks flying between heaven's thunder and earth's fire. At the critical moment, Lu Cece suddenly opened the door and happened to witness this scene of ours. Lu Sisai burst into tears. Along the way, she kept imagining that this was an elaborate act arranged by her mother and I, all just to make her hurry back and admit her mistakes. Yet, never would she have imagined that all of this was real. Her own mother had actually been intimate with her fiancé. Lu Sisai's heart was pierced by a dagger-like pain, overwhelmed with grief and fury, leaving her with an overwhelming sense of betrayal. How could you do this to me? How could you do this to me? Zhang Long, this is my mother. As my fiancé, how could you do such a thing? How can you face me after doing this? What do you take me for? What do you take me for? She rushed up to me, intent on slapping me hard with a resounding blow. How could I let her succeed? With a backhand motion, I grabbed her hand. Lu Yun said with a stern face, Lu Sisai, you're being too insolent. Along is now your father. This is utterly unrighteous. Lu Sisai was hysterical, her voice shrill. I refuse. I refuse. He's my fiancé. We haven't broken up yet. I felt extremely amused and questioned. Breaking up? How dare you have the nerve to say such things, claiming unfairness to you? Then was it fair to me? I'm the one who's your fiancé. 10 times we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get our marriage license, and every single time you abandoned me there alone because of Su Hui, making me the laughingstock of everyone. Lu Sisai did not feel she was in the wrong at all, declaring righteously. It wasn't intentional, and Su Hui truly needed me back then. I couldn't just abandon him. You're a grown man. How can you be so narrow-minded as to fuss over such trivial matters? I laughed in angry disbelief. Trivial? Marriage is trivial? Then clogged toilets, messy rooms, depressed cats. These are earth-shattering emergencies. My own fiancé, running around with another man. How is this any different from cheating? Lu Sisai retorted loudly. I didn't cheat. And he's not just some other man. He's my childhood sweetheart, my only playmate when I was little. He is also my savior. Lu Sisai told me that back in junior high school, she had been pushed into the water and nearly drowned, and it was Su Hui who saved her. That's the reason why I remained silent and yielded at every turn towards that guy before. I sneered, so what? He's your childhood sweetheart. Then who am I? Are you planning to spend the rest of your life with him? You would abandon everything for him. Then why did you agree to my marriage proposal back then? Lu Yun also stepped forward, her gaze filled with disappointment as she looked at Lu Sisai. Sisai, haven't you realized where you went wrong yet? To your own fiancé, you resort to either hitting or cursing, hurling harsh words. Yet towards another man, you shower endless tenderness and care. And then you made your fiancé kneel and apologize to another man, mercilessly seeking to crush his dignity. Is this something a fiancé could do? Especially with the marriage registration. He's had his heart deeply hurt by you 10 times over, yet you turned a blind eye, taking advantage of his love for you. If I were a man, I would have broken up with you after the first time. Lu Sisai spoke with indignant grief. Fine. I can't argue with you. But even so, Mom, we haven't broken up. I still love him. Yet you went behind my back and got marriage certified with him. Mom, how could you treat your own daughter like this? Did you ever consider my feelings? Do you still love him? I don't see any sign of it. Besides, who said we haven't broken up yet? I immediately took out a piece of paper and handed it to her. I remember telling you clearly, if there were a 10th time, we would break up. Black and white, it's right here. This is the handprint you personally pressed. Lu Sisai stared fixedly at the agreement, her face drained of color. How is this possible? I have no memory of this at all. I sneered. That's because you were busy rushing to Su Hui's house. To save time instead of signing properly, you simply pressed your fingerprint on it. Lu Sisai, trembling from head to toe, shredded the agreement into pieces and exclaimed hysterically, I don't agree. I don't agree. My mind was completely focused on Su Hui back then. I didn't even look at this agreement, nor did I really hear what you were saying. This agreement is invalid. Invalid. I expected as much and didn't stop you. Look, you said it yourself. Your mind was completely on him back then. Now, do you admit that you still love me? Lu Yun also said, Sisai, to tell you the truth, actually I had fallen in love with him long ago. It's just because of you that I restrained myself in every way. Since you don't want him anymore, why can't I have him? I also have the right to pursue happiness. If you won't love him, I will. If you won't cherish her, I will. And besides, no matter how much you kick up a fuss, it doesn't change the fact that he's your father now. Saying this, he produced his marriage certificate. Lu Sisai's face was deathly pale, her entire body limp as she slumped to the ground, tears cascading down like rain. I hate you. I hate you. She let out a hysterical roar before storming out of the door. Lu Sisai was in excruciating agony. The fiancé she was about to marry after years of being in a relationship had, at this very moment, suddenly become her own mother's husband. Amidst the agony, she also felt a thread of regret. After all those years of shared emotions, deep down he still cherished her profoundly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have agreed to go through with registering the marriage with me every time. But as someone with an extremely strong competitive spirit, she absolutely refused to allow herself to acknowledge she'd made any mistakes. Zhonglong, it's not like I can't live without you. I swear I'll make you regret this. I'll make sure you see that my married life will be 100 times happier than yours. 1,000,000 times happier. Therefore, driven by vengeance, she sought out Su Hui and proposed marriage to him. When Su Hui saw that the goddess he had been obsessively pursuing for years was finally within his grasp, he became ecstatic and registered their marriage the very next day. During the first week after marriage, Lu Cixi lived passably enjoyable days, with Su Hui doting on her in every way. But later, Su Hui completely shed his disguise. He would do nothing but beat and verbally abuse Lu Cixi. Lu Cixi, I didn't marry you to pamper you. Do you expect me to handle all these household chores alone? Lu Cixi said defiantly. Shouldn't it be you? Zhonglong can handle all the household chores himself. Why can't you? If it were him, he would never let me do any housework. This sentence directly lit the fuse of the powder keg. Mentioning an ex-boyfriend in front of her current husband was the ultimate taboo. Without another word, Su Hui kicked Lu Cixi to the ground and began pummeling him with one punch after another. You dare mention him. You dare mention him again. I'll beat you to death, you bitch. While beating Lu Cixi, Su Hui also spelled out in exact detail how he had previously targeted me. His goal was to push me out and take my place, and even told her the truth about Lu Cixi's drowning incident from back then. It turns out that Su Hui was the one who pushed Lu Cixi into the water, all to make Lu Cixi feel deep gratitude and remain unable to forget him. Originally, the two were supposed to be together, but due to family reasons, Su Hui left for another city. After hearing all this, Lu Cixi was tormented with excruciating anguish, her guilt and remorse toward me surging to an unbearable extreme. Ilong, I regret it. Please come back quickly. I know I was wrong. In the following days, what greeted Lu Cixi was not happiness, but endless domestic violence and her husband's infidelity. Since Su Hui held damning evidence against her, she found herself trapped in the marriage and could not divorce him despite her wishes. As for me, with Lu Yun's support and encouragement, I successfully started my own business, reaped the rewards of both career and love, and soon